On my 70th birthday, just as dinner was being served, my daughter raised her wine glass, her voice sweet but cold as steel. "Dad, we've decided. This house should be transferred to me to make things easier. Oh, and I already sold Mom's necklace. It's the deposit for the Cancun trip." I thought I misheard. The room was bright, yet I felt cold to the bone. My son-in-law folded his arms. "Dead people don't need jewelry, old man." My granddaughter gave a thin smile. "Instead of sulking, you should be happy. Mom's about to get a break." I looked at them, three people sitting in my house, spending my money, and now selling my memories. I didn't get angry. I didn't shout. I simply picked up my phone, quietly hit record, then gently touched the small key hanging on my neck, the key to a safe none of them knew about. I smiled and took a sip of wine. If they wanted to play a game of taking, then from this moment on, I would be the one rewriting the rules. If you're still here, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more hearts, and if it moved you, give it a like so others can find it too. My name is Franklin Ward, 70 years old, living in the suburbs of San Antonio, Texas, where the roads around the neighborhood still carry red dust and the smell of dry pine drifts from front porches. I'm a former mechanical engineer who spent 40 years working at an auto plant in Houston before retiring. Every dollar I have, every plank in this house I made with my own hands, no loans, no debts. I'm the stubborn, quiet type who always believed family is the only thing worth holding on to, until Marjorie, the wife I loved all my life, passed away 3 years ago. Since then, the house has felt emptier, leaving only the TV and the footsteps of 3 people who share my last name, but whose hearts no longer belong to me. I still thought I was living with family, until tonight, when I realized they were only living off my assets. The soft clink of a fork on porcelain pulled me back. Candlelight flickered across my daughter Natalie's face, now a stranger's. Her eyes held, none of the warmth I once knew, only the chill of someone used to making decisions. Derek, her husband, leaned back in his chair like a man who had just won a big hand. And Kayla, my granddaughter I once held when she was 2 days old, kept her head down, scrolling her phone with a smirk. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You said you sold your mother's necklace." Natalie didn't bother to look at me. "Yes, you hid it in that old drawer. I needed the money, and selling it fast got a good price." I clenched my hands under the table. "She wore that for 42 years. She answered flatly. "Then that's enough, right, Dad? I need money now, and there's no point keeping old things from the dead." Derek cut in, dry as dust. "We're using it as a deposit for the Cancun trip. You don't need to worry. Old folks should rest and let the young handle things." I looked at him. The way he said "old folks" made me feel erased in my own house. The air in the dining room turned heavy. I stood and quietly left the table. Behind me, Natalie sighed. "Dad's throwing another tantrum. He spent his life clutching useless stuff." I walked slowly to my room, each step heavy on the wood floor. With the door closed, I sat on the edge of the bed. The warm lamplight washed over a burgundy velvet box, already open. Inside was only the empty satin lining where the gold necklace had rested for 3 years since Marjorie passed. I still remember when she first gave it to me. It was a morning in April 1981, our wedding day. Sunlight streamed through the church window, lighting the gold heart engraved with tiny words. "Forever M and F," she said. "If one day I go first, keep this for me. Don't let anyone take it." Now I'd let it be taken, and not by a stranger, but by my own daughter. I opened the drawer and took out the leather notebook I've used since my days as a mechanical engineer at Ford. The ballpoint pen slid. Over the first page, March 17th. Action 1. Document everything. I added, "No anger, no complaining, only observe, only record." In the living room, the TV blared. Derek's voice echoed. "You planning to eat alone and sleep alone too? Careful on the stairs." Kayla's laughter followed, sharp and shallow. I opened the second drawer, the one with the small metal box, the key hanging on my neck. Inside were the house deed, savings books, and one of Marjorie's old photo albums. I stroked a picture of her smiling in the yellow chrysanthemum garden by the porch. "Honey," I whispered, "they sold the only thing of yours that was left." Anger rose, but I remembered her words. "Franklin, if they ever hurt you, don't lose your calm. Let them expose themselves." I breathed in, slow and deep. I didn't yet know that the very necklace they sold would open a secret Marjorie had kept all her life. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the desk under the small lamp, papers for the San Antonio house deed spread out. Everything was in my name. Natalie had often urged, "Dad, transfer the house to me early. It makes paperwork easier." And I always hesitated. Now I understood. Easier was another word for take. Around midnight, I heard them talking softly in the living room. Derek, he's still strong. He might not sign. Natalie, just a few more months. He'll slow down. Then the deed will be ours. Kayla, after the Cancun trip, Mom, let's buy a new sofa. Each voice cut like a knife. I pulled out an old phone and turned on automatic recording for any voices within 2 meters. Then I wrote another line in the notebook. Action 2. Save every word, every action, miss nothing. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. While they slept, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started searching. On the screen, I typed slowly. Pawn shops near San Antonio. More than 20 names popped up. I called each place and described it clearly. A gold heart-shaped necklace engraved Forever M and F. The first 4 shops didn't know. The 5th answered bluntly, no. On the 6th call, an older man's voice came through. Alamo Gold and Pawn. Yesterday we bought a gold heart necklace like you described. Are you the woman's husband? My throat closed. Yes, I'm her husband. He spoke slowly. I think you should come in. There's something you need to see in person. I checked the time. 10 a. The house was quiet except for the steady hum of the AC. I poured coffee into a thermos and put on my old jacket. Before leaving, I looked back at the kitchen where Natalie said those words last night. The sting was still there, but underneath it, a different flame had started. I would take back what belonged to Marjorie. On the drive to the pawn shop, I thought about the years gone by. When Marjorie was alive, the house was always full of apple pie smell and her Sunday humming. Natalie once clung to her mother, but after Marjorie passed, the only things left in her seemed to be pragmatism and calculation. Maybe I'd spoiled her too long. When I finally woke up, I realized I'd been feeding 3 adults in my own home. When I parked in front of Alamo Gold and Pawn, I took a long breath. The red-painted sign was faded. Texas sun burned hot. I gripped the key on my neck, the last piece tying me to Marjorie. I stepped in. The bell over the door chimed. An older man looked up from the counter. You must be Mr. Ward. I'm Harold. I nodded. Yes. You said, there's something I should see. He gave a faint, sympathetic smile. When we cleaned the necklace, the locket popped open. Inside was a very small piece of paper. Looks like your wife left something for you. I froze. A slip of paper? The locket could open? In 42 years, I'd never seen it open. Harold set a small velvet box on the counter. Fluorescent light glinted off the gold, and my heart seemed to stop. I didn't know what that paper said, but I knew this. From this moment on, the fight to reclaim Marjorie's honor and memories had begun. Harold slid the box toward me. His hand trembled as if afraid to scratch what lay inside. Here you go, Mr. Ward, he said softly. The woman who sold it yesterday, mid-40s, in a hurry. No wedding ring, brown hair in a high tie, white shirt. She didn't seem sentimental. I asked if she was sure. She just said, sell it fast, I'm in a rush. I tightened my hand. Natalie. I knew her tone when she dodged responsibility, cold, short, decisive, like she was talking about something that belonged to no one. Harold opened the lid and nudged it toward me. The necklace lay there, soft gold, the little heart reflecting the overhead white light. My pulse slowed and steadied. I hadn't seen that glow in 3 years. While cleaning, Harold continued, I noticed a tiny gap on the heart. I twisted gently and it opened. Inside was a rolled scrap of paper, so small I almost tore it. He took a clear plastic sleeve from the drawer. Inside lay a piece no bigger than my pinky. I think this is what she wanted you to find. I reached out. The paper felt cool and light as ash. I opened it slowly, each fold thin enough to tear with a careless move. The slanted letters were small, but I knew them at once Marjorie's. The way she wrote the letter T with a slightly curved crossbar was hers alone. The short line squeezed my heart. Texas Heritage Bank, Box 6129. I read it again and again 3 times before I believed my eyes. Marjorie had never told me she had a bank box. She was careful, yes, but she shared everything with me, or so I'd believed. Harold murmured, I assume it's a safe deposit box. Maybe she left you something. As for the necklace, I paid $800, but the real value is around $1,200. If you want it back, just pay fair value and it's yours. I opened my wallet. My hand didn't shake. It felt steady. I'll pay $1,200, I said, and 20 more for your kindness. Harold shook his head. No need. I've lost someone too. I understand. He placed the necklace in the box and wrapped it in a thin cloth. When my fingers touched the metal, it felt like touching Marjorie one last time. The gold's chill seeped into my skin, then warmed in my chest. I looked at Harold and nodded. You just returned a part of my life. No, he smiled. She left it for you long ago. I'm only the middleman. Outside, the noon sun cut like a knife. I stood still for a moment and closed my eyes. I saw Marjorie smiling in the rose garden, gray hair in the breeze, a teacup in her hand, warm light the color of the necklace I'd just reclaimed. In the truck, I set the velvet box on the passenger seat. The world's noise faded. I took a photo of the tiny paper, then tucked the original in my wallet between 2 bank cards. I made a new folder on my phone, Marjorie's Clue. I didn't start the engine right away. I needed a few minutes to breathe and accept what was happening. In 24 hours, I had lost a piece of memory and then found a secret that might change everything. After 40 years with Marjorie, I thought I knew everything, her habits, her smiles, the way she went quiet. But in all those years, I never knew the locket could open. She wore it daily, even to sleep. How long had this paper been inside? When did she write it for me? Under what circumstances? I cracked the window. Hot Texas air and the smell of dry dust blew in. A mix of feelings washed over me, betrayed yet rescued. Betrayed by my own daughter, who sold the only thing left of her mother. Rescued by my late wife, who still protected me from the other side, with a secret small enough to outlast time. I drove home slowly, no radio. I needed the quiet to fit the pieces, together. Marjorie never did anything without a reason. If she hid this paper, there had to be one, and that reason might be the answer to everything. When I pulled up, Natalie sat on the porch, phone in hand, laughing into a call. As I walked in, she glanced at me and looked away, as if I no longer mattered. I'm going for a walk, I said. You should walk more, she replied without looking up. Good for your health. I smiled and said nothing. The wooden door clicked shut behind me, soft, like a promise. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and drew the curtains. From my inside pocket, I took out the velvet box and opened it. Under the warm lamp, the necklace glowed gentle, as Marjorie's eyes in her final years. I hid it in the underwear drawer, a place Natalie rarely touched. The paper went in my wallet, next to our wedding photo. Then I opened the safe and checked everything. All intact. but I knew Natalie would try to get in sooner or later. I wrote a quick list of things likely to be searched. Velvet box, put back. Tax and insurance files. House deed. External drive with family photos. Each line reminded me I was on someone else's turf in my own home. That evening, we ate in silence. Natalie stared at me like I was an obstacle. Derek buried his face in his phone. Kayla took food photos and posted them. I watched them every move, every look. This distance didn't begin tonight. It was the result of years I looked away, believing family will understand. Now I know, when money and greed move in, understand is an empty word. That night I wrote in my notebook, Action 3, verify the paper Texas Heritage Bank. Under it I added, don't let them know. Don't let them suspect. I cleared my call history, Harold's number, and the pawn shops. I turned off location services and removed the safety location sharing Natalie had set up for Dad. Before bed, I opened the metal box once more and checked the spare key only I knew the hiding place for. I set the notebook on the desk. The line Action 3 glowed under the lamplight. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank. Tonight, I had to stay quiet like a hunter who knows when to wait. If Natalie wanted to believe I was slowing down, confused, or giving up, let her. She didn't know the game had just begun, and I had moved first. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Texas sun slipped through the blinds, pale and dry. I brewed coffee and sat at the table, looking at Marjorie's ceramic cup still on the shelf, thinking about the number 6129. I grabbed the document pouch, Marjorie's death certificate, my driver's license, old household records. I put everything in a black case and tucked the necklace into my inside pocket. Feeling it against my chest made my heart pound. It was like carrying her with me again. Before leaving, I checked the living room. Natalie still asleep, Derek snoring on the sofa, Kayla just awake and glued to her phone. I slipped past them without a word. If they knew where I was going, they'd interfere. I wasn't letting anyone into this. The drive to Texas Heritage Bank was about 10 miles. I kept it slow and tried to stay calm. Morning air came through the cracked window, smelling of asphalt and dry grass. I wondered why Marjorie hid this so long. She was transparent with me about everything. We promised each other, no secrets. Yet 3 years after she's gone, I'm following the trail of one. The bank sat at the corner of Houston Street, a red brick building with a faded blue-silver sign. Inside, the air was cool with the scent of old paper. A middle-aged woman approached with a professional smile. Good morning. How can I help you today? I need to access safe deposit box 6129. The name is Marjorie Ward. Here are her death certificate and my ID. She took the paperwork, typed a bit, then looked at me, slightly surprised. Box 6129. Last opened in November 2019. No visits since. I'll just verify a few details. Please give me a few minutes. I nodded, my heart picking up. 2019, when Marjorie started to fail. I remembered the hospital visits and the private appointments she hid. She said she was just tired, but she'd been somewhere else here, maybe. She returned with a small set of keys and a sheet of paper. Everything is in order, Mr. Ward. Please follow me. The safe deposit area was in the basement. It was so quiet I heard my own footsteps on the carpeted hallway. She opened a door and gestured to a small room with a metal table. I'll give you privacy. Press the bell when you're done. With the door closed, I looked at the gray metal box in front of me. 6129. I sat, took a deep breath, and turned the key. A soft click. Inside was a thick manila envelope and several neat stacks of cash tied with rubber bands. I touched and counted roughly $100 bills, some old, some new. I estimated close to $50,000. Under the cash was a thin envelope, simply labeled in the slanted hand I knew by heart. Franklin. My hand shook. Touching the blue ink felt like touching Marjorie's hand gone 3 years, but her voice and smile still here in every breath. I opened it. 2 handwritten pages, neat and steady. The paper smelled old, slightly yellowed. I read each line slowly, as if swallowing pieces of memory. Dear Franklin, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. I've prepared for this day for a long time. You know I save every cent. You used to laugh and say, Marjorie, you count pennies like an accountant. But I have my reasons. I saw what you didn't want to see, Natalie. She loves you, but she learned to love with calculation. She treats feelings like transactions, and you, my kind husband, are too trusting. I fear one day, when I'm gone, she'll turn your love into a bottomless wallet. I paused, fingers tight on the page. Each word pricked like a pin. So I saved for 30 years, wages, bonuses, even some of the grocery money you gave me that I didn't use. It's all here. You don't need to spend this. You just need to know you are not poor and you don't need to depend on anyone. Remember 3 things. First, document everything: words, actions, papers, because memory fails when we're weak. Second, build evidence with photos, signatures, facts, because truth will save you when someone tries to flip it. Third, stay within the law. Don't fight with emotion. Fight with reason and justice. Don't let anyone turn you into a victim, Franklin. This house, this life, you built them with your own hands. Don't let guilt or warped family ties make you a cash machine for the ungrateful. By then, the lines blurred. Tears smeared the ink. I pressed the envelope to my chest, as if she was standing behind me, a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Now you see, don't you?" I sat a long time. The room was utterly silent except for my heartbeat, slow and clear. When I looked up, the ceiling light made a pale shine on the metal table. I folded the letter and slipped it into my inside pocket, leaving the cash where it was. I didn't want to touch it. That money wasn't just funds. It was Marjorie's living will. I only needed to follow her instructions, document, build evidence, stay within the law. I pressed the bell. The attendant returned and nodded. "All set, Mr. Ward?" "All set," I said softly. "Thank you." Outside on the steps, Texas sun poured down. My eyes stung not from light but from a tender ache I knew well. Marjorie was still here, not in body but in wisdom, in the way she prepared me for the fight she knew I'd face. I walked to the truck, heavy-hearted but oddly clear-headed. In the rearview mirror, my face looked older, but my eyes had changed. I wasn't just enduring anymore. I knew I was holding the first move on the board. Back home, I locked my door and drew the curtains. I opened the notebook and wrote the first line of the new chapter. Action 2. Set up evidence. Below it, a smaller line only for me. Marjorie, I got your letter. I promise I won't let anyone take what belongs to us. The next morning, I looked at that line again. Action 2, set up evidence, sat square in the middle of the page. Last night's pen stroke still slightly smudged with sweat. I sat with it for a long time, listening to my heartbeat find its rhythm with reason. Marjorie had said, document, build evidence, stay within the law. I had her letter. Now it was time to act. I opened my laptop and searched Arizona Home Recording Law. The first result, single-party consent. Only one party needs to know about recording in your own home. Meaning I had every right to protect my space as long as I didn't invade truly private quarters. This was my house. Every brick, bulb, and bill. I quietly ordered a device called SmokeView Security 4K. Looks like a regular smoke detector but hides a 160-degree camera with cloud backup. 2-day shipping. I paid with a secondary account no one knew and set pickup at a postal counter near a gas station 3 miles away. While waiting those 2 days, I documented everything. Utility bills in my name. Food in the fridge, every item bought by me. The messy living room, sofa littered with crumbs, beer cans, Derek's jacket, Kayla's shoes in the walkway. I photographed every corner, not to torture myself, but for the truth. For 3 years they'd lived here without paying a cent of rent or utilities. Derek had been unemployed since the auto shop let him go. He claimed he stayed home to care for Dad. I listed every loan I'd given him. $4,800 to buy a used car to drive for Uber. $2,300 for repair tools. $12,100 more for a small investment. Not $1 returned. I opened Excel and titled a column, Investments, No Repayment. The final figure appeared, $19,200. I stared at that cold line and wondered, how long had it been since I looked at truth as numbers? In the afternoon, Natalie came home. I heard the door open, the thud of a bag on the floor, then her voice calling from the kitchen. Dad, I talked to Derek. This house will be transferred to my name sooner or later anyway. Doing the paperwork early just makes things less complicated. Her tone was as light as if she were talking about buying another lot. I sat at the dining table, silent, gave a slight nod, then touched the phone recording under the newspaper. I saved the file, titled, The 14th of March 2025, Inheritance Statement. That night, I sat by the window with moonlight spilling through the thin curtain. I opened Kayla's Facebook page, the granddaughter I used to hold when she first learned to walk. She had written, I love my grandpa, but Alzheimer's is cruel. Some people don't even recognize their own family anymore. Below were pitying comments, sad face emojis, and a few friends writing, Hang in there, Kayla. I stared at the screen for a long time. I had never been diagnosed with dementia, never once forgotten a bill or a doctor's appointment. Yet now, my own granddaughter was building the image of me as a confused old man to set up something bigger. I hit print screen, saved the image, titled, The 16th of March 2025, Public Smear. 2 days later, the package arrived. I opened it. A small smoke detector, ivory white with a matte sheen like any household item. I read the instructions carefully, installed the monitoring app on my phone, then waited for everyone to go out. At noon, when Natalie went to work and Derek took Kayla to the mall, I grabbed a ladder, removed the old smoke detector in the living room corner, and replaced it with the new one. Perfect placement. From there it could see the sofa where Derek always sprawled and the kitchen door, where Natalie often came and went. I tested the connection. Clear picture, clean audio, saving to a private cloud. That evening, while everyone watched TV, I sat in my room pretending to watch the news as my phone streamed every frame live. Derek stretched out, feet on the table, and said loudly, Think about it once the old man's gone. We tear down part of the living room wall, open it into the kitchen. Wouldn't that look better? Natalie replied with a soft laugh. Yeah, you're right. If you don't move fast, someone else might snatch this place first. They both laughed. I sat still, watching the frames, listening to the laughter echo in my own house, and felt something strange, not anger, but a razor-clear calm. I saved the video, titled, The 18th of March 2025, Threat to Seize. The next night, I reviewed all the files, photos of utility bills, spreadsheet for $19,200, recording of Natalie, declaring, This house is mine, screenshot of Kayla's smear, clip of Derek talking about remodeling after the old man's gone. I sorted everything into folders, exploitation, finances, threats, smears. Each folder had copies on an encrypted USB and the originals in the cloud. I also wrote by hand in the notebook. Update 3/19, full evidence, 3 backups. Night fell. I sat at the desk and opened Marjorie's letter. The paper had softened, the ink had faded a little, but each line read like it was written yesterday. I reread the ending, where she wrote in smaller script, Franklin, If you ever have to stand alone, don't be afraid. Slow and steady, follow the law. Truth always wins, as long as you're patient. I folded the letter, pressed it to my chest, and drew a long breath. The smell of paper, time, and memory blended into a gentle, steady strength. I turned on the desk lamp and wrote on the next page of the notebook. Action 3. Find an elder law attorney. I knew it was time to step out of the role of the easygoing father. This time, I wouldn't fight with tears, but with evidence and with justice. Outside, the night wind moved through the pines. The leaves brushed together like Marjorie whispering in my ear. Slow and steady, all right? 3 days later, I called the office of Eleanor Park, a San Antonio attorney specializing in elder rights. The name Eleanor gave me a start. It was my mother's name, and her voice over the phone was low, clear, and decisive. Mr. Ward, I take few cases, but from what I hear, it sounds like you don't need rescuing. You just need your victory formalized. That voice was enough for me to trust her. The appointment was set for Monday morning. I arrived 15 minutes early, sat in a bright oak-paneled waiting room, my hand resting on the briefcase of evidence. When the receptionist called my name, I stepped into an orderly, well-lit office, walls lined with certificates and awards. Miss Park was in her 50s, black hair streaked with gray, thin frames, a serious but not cold face. She shook my hand, firm and warm. I reviewed the summary you sent. Let's get straight to it. You're saying they've been living in your house for 3 years without paying a dime? Correct. I have photos, bills, spreadsheets, recordings, and video. I've saved them all on this USB. I slid the USB across. She plugged it in, opened each file, watching slowly, barely blinking. When the clip of Derek saying, "Once the old man's gone, we'll redo the house," played, she paused the frame and looked at me. Mr. Ward, I'll be honest, if every client prepared like this, courts would see far less injustice. She removed her glasses and leaned back. We won't file a lawsuit yet. The quickest and most lawful way is to turn them from family staying over into tenants. Once there's a lease, anything they do next, whether not paying or breaking the rules, becomes lawful evidence. I nodded. How will you structure the lease? Standard, not emotional. $1,500 per month plus 50% of utilities. Include terms about conduct, property care, and a 30-day cure period before termination. Each word sounded like metal being honed, no empty promises, just a plan. I'll hire a notary to deliver it at your house, directly to your daughter with witnesses and proof of service. I smiled faintly. Miss Park, Marjorie would be proud to see me sitting here. She smiled back. And she was right to prepare that letter for you. That woman understood life's laws better than many of us who practice law. 2 days later, at 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. A middle-aged woman in a black suit with a notary public badge, Karen Lopez, stood on the porch. Hello, Mr. Ward. I'm here to serve lease agreement number 14 to 22. I let her in and set an envelope with Park's firm logo on the table. Natalie sat in the kitchen, hair in a high bun, blouse unbuttoned at the collar, scrolling her phone and grumbling. What is that, Dad? Documents requiring acknowledgement, I answered evenly. When Karen read the terms aloud, rent of $1,500, 50% of utilities, payment due on the 5th of each month, Natalie shot up, her voice sharp. Family doesn't charge family. Dad, who rents a house from their own father? Karen kept calm. My job is to deliver and record proof of service. You may refuse to sign, but service is still complete. Natalie snatched the papers and skimmed them. Her face flushed. This is insane. Derek, get in here. Derek shuffled in from the living room, wrinkled t-shirt, beer can dangling. He read a few lines, then looked up with a crooked smile. You know signing this won't stand, right? We can always request a competency evaluation. I think you're losing it. I raised my head and looked straight at him. Do it. I welcome that. There are children who think parents means assets, but Franklin has taught them that filial piety can't be bought and respect must be held by actions. In your view, in this story, who is truly losing it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Karen noted on the record, recipient refused to sign but has read and been informed of the lease's legal effect. I signed for the delivery, sealed the envelope, and smiled at Karen. Thank you. I'll forward a copy to Miss Park. She nodded and left. Natalie stood frozen, fists tight around the paper, eyes blazing. What are you doing, Dad? I'm your daughter. Yes, I said quietly, and that's why I gave you 3 years to prove it. But in those 3 years, you proved something else. She threw the paper on the table, stormed upstairs, and slammed the door. That night, I scanned and emailed Miss Park the proof of service record. She replied within 10 minutes. Perfect. Now we wait for their response. If they don't pay within 30 days, we have grounds to sue or evict. I breathed deeply. At last, everything was moving within the law's orbit. The next morning, I walked into the bank. The teller line was familiar, and the manager, Marcus, who'd helped me for years when Marjorie was alive, stood there. I handed him a paper. Marcus, I want Natalie removed from all powers of attorney and secondary accounts, and I want all passwords changed. Also, please provide a copy of access logs, especially any attempts from unfamiliar IP addresses. Marcus skimmed and nodded. Is everything all right, Mr. Ward? No. I've just learned that trust needs limits. He smiled lightly. Understood. I'll take care of it. By the way, last week someone tried to log into your account from a Dallas IP. The system blocked it due to missing verification. I tightened my grip on the pen. Please print that record for me. I need it for my file. After signing, I stood up feeling lighter, as if I'd just closed another door that shouldn't be opened. From the bank, I stopped by Hopkins and Rowe, Estate and Probate. A young blonde specialist led me to a small conference room. I want to change the beneficiaries in my will, I said plainly. To whom? From individuals to organizations. Specifically, the Support Fund for Retired Engineers, the Texas Alzheimer's Research Institute, and the Elder Protection Organization. She looked up, a bit surprised. No surviving family, Mr. Ward? Yes, I answered, but blood doesn't always mean family. She nodded without another question. I signed page after page. When the pen finally stopped, it felt like setting the last stone of a fortress built to protect myself. That evening, I sat at the table and opened my notebook. On a fresh page, I wrote, Action 4, Close the financial safety loop. Below it, I listed, Change passwords, enable fraud alerts, open a new secondary account for personal expenses, consolidate savings into 2 primary banks. Note, no one accesses finances except Miss Park. Late at night, I heard Natalie and Derek arguing in the living room. What did you say? $1,500 a month? This is his house and he's charging his daughter? Let him deal with it. He won't last much longer, and the house ends up ours. I heard every word, and it didn't hurt anymore. I just felt settled. The next morning, I made coffee and looked at the red note on the fridge, a line I'd written, Pay rent by the 5th of each month. It sat there, a cold period in the kitchen. The 5th came and went. No transfer, no explanation. I took my notebook, opened to a new page and wrote, Steady and clear, month 1, no payment, recorded. When I closed the notebook, I heard the porch wind whisper at the window. It was as if Marjorie said softly, Well done, Franklin. Don't rush. Truth will speak for itself. On Monday morning, I was in my room with the notebook open when I heard heavy footsteps in the hall. The door flew open. Derek stood blocking the threshold, hands braced on the frame, muscles showing beneath a wrinkled t-shirt. His eyes were hard, beer on his breath. "We talked it over," he said, trying to sound calm but raspy with heat. "That ridiculous lease won't hold. You get that? Father-in-law charging rent? People will laugh at you." I lifted my head from the notebook and answered slowly. "Then let them laugh. Everyone in this house has the right to choose their actions." He raised an eyebrow and stepped closer, less than a handspan away. "You really want to escalate this?" I didn't answer. I simply looked at him steady, unflinching. In my mind, the smoke detector camera's angle appeared clearly. The lens was capturing this entire scene from the opposite corner of the ceiling. The silence between us felt thick, broken only by the soft tick of the wall clock counting seconds. He hissed through his teeth, "I'm serious. Be careful, old man." Then he slapped the doorframe and turned away, leaving cigarette stench and a heaviness in the air. I sat a moment longer, then quietly opened my phone and pulled up the app. The angle was crystal clear. Derek blocking the door, neck tendons up, threatening tone. I saved the clip, titled, "The 2nd of April 2025, Bodily Threat, Kitchen." That evening, while I was cooking a simple meal, fried eggs and boiled greens, Derek walked into the kitchen. I kept my calm and avoided his gaze. "Still eating alone?" he asked. Half laugh, half sneer. "I eat my portion. I don't touch yours." He stepped closer, voice low but harsh. "Do you realize you're breaking this family?" Natalie cried all night. I turned to set the pan on the stove when he suddenly shoved my shoulder. It wasn't a hard push, but enough to make me stumble. My hand clipped the counter, the pan slipped, and oil splattered across the floor. The kitchen went dead quiet. He stood there, then muttered, "I didn't mean it." I said nothing, just picked up the pan and set it in the sink. My heart pounded, but my head was strangely calm. Overhead, the hidden camera had captured everything. I went to my room and opened the video. The angle was crisp. Derek closing in, his hand on my shoulder, the shove clear as day. I paused at second 12 the moment I nearly fell. No more words were needed. The evidence was stronger than any excuse. I saved the file, copied it to a USB, and titled it, "The 2nd of April 2025, Minor Assault, Kitchen." The next morning, while making coffee, I noticed the envelope from Miss Park confirming the filing. Date for the eviction was no longer on the table where I'd left it the night before. I searched around and spotted a corner peeking out from under a dish towel. I pulled it free and knew at once what I feared had happened. The envelope had been opened, the flap torn, adhesive still tacky. I set it on the table and photographed it from several angles. The sender line, the tear, the wrinkles. I saved the pictures in the folder Mail Tampering. That afternoon, the bank called. Marcus's voice had turned serious. "Mr. Ward," someone identifying herself as Natalie Ward called today, asking to reinstate an old power of attorney. She claimed the bank made a mistake removing her and demanded access again. "We refused, since records show you revoked it last week." I closed my eyes and took a breath. "Thank you, Marcus. Please send me the call recording and the blocked access report." "Already done," he said. "I figured you'd need them for your attorney." That evening, I bundled everything. Video of Derek threatening and shoving, photos of the torn envelope, bank report documenting unauthorized access attempts. I compressed them into a single file, password protected, and emailed it to Eleanor Park with the short subject line, "Evidence Update, Assault and Mail Tampering." She called back in under half an hour. Her voice was firm, with a hint of compassion. "Mr. Ward, it's time to file for an emergency eviction. Their behavior is no longer a civil dispute, it's domestic violence and elder abuse." I stayed silent, hearing each word like a verdict already written. "We'll file in the morning," she continued. Bring copies of your medical records. I need clinical evidence of stress or mental harm. Your family doctor still available? Yes, I said. I'll go first thing. I went to Dr. Reynolds' clinic. He's followed my health for 10 years. He's a few years older than me, thin, with a low voice. Franklin, you look worn out. What's going on? I just need a full checkup. And, if possible, please note my blood pressure and stress level. He looked at me, understood, and didn't pry. After the exam, he typed quietly. Patient shows signs of prolonged stress, elevated blood pressure, and risk of mental harm if the current environment does not change. I took the paper and thanked him. On the way home, I saw two neighbors chatting on a porch, their eyes strange when they looked at me. Kayla must have posted something. I checked my phone. Sure enough, another post. I love my grandpa, but Alzheimer's is making him forget who family is. It's heartbreaking. Dozens of pitying comments, shares, prayers. No one knew the truth. I quietly took a screenshot and added it to public smears. Update. That night, I sat in my office and opened the evidence list. Nearly 20 files, videos, photos, audio, statements, medical reports, everything organized by date, labeled, described. I plugged in an external drive, backed up the lot, then printed another hard copy binder titled Franklin Ward Evidence Log. As the printer hummed, the steady rip of paper sounded like a countdown to the day justice arrives. Before bed, I opened my door and stepped into the hallway. The house lay in darkness. I climbed onto a stool and mounted a second camera in the hall corner covering my room and the kitchen door. A tiny status light blinked once, then went dark, blending into the wall. I locked my office tight and tucked the key in my jacket pocket. The Texas night was eerily still, only the wind brushing the roof. I sat on the bed and watched the tiny green speck on the ceiling, a small eye of justice they didn't know was watching. I thought of Marjorie. If she were here, she'd lay a hand on my shoulder and say softly, "Hold steady, Franklin. Truth will speak for itself." And I knew that day was getting close. The emergency hearing took place on a gray weekday morning, a misty drizzle hanging like thin fog. I sat in the front row of a small courtroom, Attorney Eleanor Park at my side, a thick file before us. Across the aisle, Derek leaned back with folded arms, defiance cut into his face. Natalie sat next to him in dark glasses, lips tight, trying to hold a confidence I knew was fake. The judge skimmed the file, then looked up. His voice was even and clear, no bias, but each sentence struck like a gavel in the air. The court acknowledges acts of minor assault, mail tampering, and financial threats against the plaintiff, Mr. Franklin Ward. A temporary order is granted. The defendant, Derek Hunter, must maintain a minimum distance of 3 meters from Mr. Ward. The formal eviction hearing will be scheduled in 6 weeks. I heard the clerk's pen tapping lightly. Eleanor touched my hand as if to say, "We're on the right path." Outside, Derek sneered at me. 3 meters it is, old man. The house is big, hide wherever you want." Natalie tugged his arm. "Let's go." They sped off, tires fanning water. I stood still and took a deep breath. 6 weeks, just 6 weeks more, and justice would be complete. But the days that followed were anything but peaceful. They stayed put, daring the order. Not a cent of rent, not a word of apology. Derek brushed my shoulder on purpose when passing. Natalie blasted music, clattered around whenever I sat to write. The house, once full of Marjorie's laughter, had become a cold battlefield. Every night, I sat in my office reviewing the 2 cameras' footage. They had no idea that every action, every word, was being saved clear and lawful. Slowly, I realized something else. Their target wasn't me. Their target was the house. Without me, this near $500,000 home would become family property. They didn't need me out of their lives. They needed me, off the paperwork. That night, I sat by the window looking at the trees. Out front, drizzle drifting in the streetlight. I remembered what Eleanor Parks said at our first meeting. To win quickly, you don't just hold the battlefield. Sometimes you remove the battlefield from your opponent. I picked up the phone and dialed her. Eleanor, a question. If I sell this house while the eviction case is pending, is there a problem? Silence for a few seconds. Then she answered, No, as long as you're the lawful owner and not selling to evade responsibility. But what are you planning? I'm not evading anyone. I'm just taking away their battlefield. The next morning, I met with Thomas Vega, a realtor I knew from a friend's sale. He's around 40, quick, and specializes in difficult cases, houses tied up in disputes or occupied by unauthorized residents. Thomas reviewed the file, then walked the house with me. This place is great, Mr. Ward, he said. I can sell it within 2 weeks. If you agree, I'll handle all negotiations and legal coordination. I nodded without hesitation. Sell. He looked at me, surprised. You're sure? I thought you might. I'm sure. I don't need to hold a poisoned battlefield. In the afternoon, the for sale sign was planted by Thomas right in the front yard, next to the flower bed Marjorie once tended. The red letters stood out against the green grass, bright as a declaration. I sat on the porch, listened to the stake being driven in, then looked up. Natalie had just come back from the supermarket, bags in hand, and saw the sign. She froze, as if slapped. What is this? Her voice caught. The for sale sign, I answered calmly. You don't have the right to do that. I have every right. And I just did. She looked at me, mouth open but speechless. In her eyes, fear mixed with fury, the first time I'd ever seen Natalie lose her confidence. When she went inside, I stayed on the porch, the evening wind moving through my hair. Eleanor texted, Strong tactic. Moving the benefit out of their reach is the fastest way to take back ownership. Keep going, I'll track the legal steps closely. In the days that followed, I began clearing out and inventorying belongings. I gathered every valuable item, Marjorie's watch, the wedding album, the velvet box with the necklace, into a private room. I photographed each one, noted details clearly, and saved the timestamps. Every photo was evidence in case they accused me of loss or damage. Natalie walked by, saw me packing, and asked coldly, What is this supposed to mean? Planning to move out for good? I just replied, I'm preparing for new buyers to view the house. Her eyes widened. You're actually selling? Yes, I'm selling. And whoever buys will need an empty house. Kayla overheard, stepped out and squinted. If you sell the house, where are you going to live? I smiled without answering. She turned away with a scoff and whispered something to her mother. The house was quiet in an artificial way. I knew, behind those doors, they were plotting, but I felt more and more calm. I wasn't afraid of them anymore because every step I took was legal, transparent, and nothing can stop the law. A week later, the first prospective buyers came, a well-dressed middle-aged couple from Austin with Thomas. I opened the door, smiled, and showed them through the living room, kitchen, and hallway. They liked it a lot, kept praising it. This home has a warm energy, Mr. Ward. But while we were talking on the porch, Derek came out with a beer can, smirking. Careful, he said. This house isn't exactly peaceful. There's a senile old man who forgets to turn off the stove, nearly burned the place down a few times. Thomas stared at him and then looked back at me, understanding. I gave a slight shake of the head and a calm smile. Thanks for the reminder, I told the buyers. But fortunately, I still remember to turn off the stove every day, and there's a new alarm system. You can rest assured. The couple glanced at each other, then laughed and nodded. They kept touring the house. Derek finished his beer, tossed it into the trash, and went back in, face dark. I stood on the porch, watching him go, strangely at peace. The for sale sign still glinted in the late sun. They thought they were cornering me, but in truth, I had taken away their battlefield, and now all they had left were bare walls and a house that would soon no longer bear their name. A week after Derek's stunt in front of the buyers, Thomas Vega brought another young couple. His name was Miguel Torres, an electronics engineer, and his wife, Sienna, an elementary school teacher. Both were in their early 30s, gentle faces and bright eyes. They arrived on time, with polite smiles and the demeanor of people who respect a living space. I opened the door to welcome them. Miguel shook my hand firm and warm. "We know this house has a few issues, but we've also heard you're a very principled owner. We think that's a good thing." I smiled lightly. Principles keep people from getting lost in greed. We walked through each room, living room, hallway, kitchen, then out to the backyard where Marjorie once grew white roses. Sienna lingered a long time beneath the trellis. "It's beautiful," she said. "The woman who lived here must have loved flowers." I nodded. She did. She was the soul of this house. When they finished, Thomas opened his folder and went over the details. "Mr. Ward, they're willing to pay the full list price, plus a 5% deposit if you'll agree to close within 2 days. They don't require repairs, just a quick handover." I didn't hesitate. "Agreed. Speed matters more than a few extra thousand." Miguel smiled and extended his hand. "Thank you. I promise to keep this home as peaceful as before." When they left, I stood on the porch, watching their small silver car disappear. For the first time in months, I felt something like relief. The eviction hearing day arrived. The courtroom was fuller this time, as the case had been classified family with psychological and financial abuse factors. Attorney Park entered with a slim black briefcase, only what was necessary. I sat beside her, composed. Across the aisle, Natalie and Derek had dressed more formally. Derek wore a black suit with a crooked tie. Natalie wore a gray dress, makeup carefully done but eyes bruised. Kayla sat behind them, phone in hand, ready to record at any moment. When the judge entered, all murmurs ceased. "Miss." Park rose, her voice crisp. "Your Honor, this is not simply a father being displaced by his child. This is a textbook case of elder abuse, substantiated by specific, lawful, digitally authenticated evidence." She opened her laptop and played the first video, Derek blocking a doorway, slapping the frame, threatening tone. Then the second, the shove in the kitchen, the sound of hot oil, the clatter of the pan, me stumbling. Finally, a series of photos of the torn envelope, the $19,200 borrowed unreturned ledger, and the bank letter confirming 2 attempted unauthorized access events. The judge sat upright, nodding at each segment. His eyes were cool, needing no commentary. Then came opposing counsel, a young man speaking too fast. "Your Honor, this is a family matter. Minor scuffles between parent and child are inevitable. You cannot call that assault." The judge cut him off, voice firm. "Assault is assault. The law does not permit anyone to push another person, parent or child, when the victim is over 60. The courtroom fell silent. I heard Kayla swallow. Eleanor Park stood, bowed a thank you to the judge, and closed succinctly. "We ask for justice, not pity." The gavel fell. The court grants the petition for eviction. Defendants Natalie Ward, Derek Hunter, and Kayla Hunter must vacate the property at 21 Magnolia Lane within 30 days from today. Any obstruction will be handled under elder abuse statutes. A second rap, dry and final. I exhaled and let my eyes close. Eleanor turned and gave a faint smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Ward. Phase 1 is complete." Natalie burst into tears. Derek stood frozen, face drained. Kayla stammered, lifted her phone to record, and was immediately warned by court staff. "No filming in the courtroom." She flushed and put the phone away, eyes wet not from remorse but shame. In the hallway, Natalie hurried after me. "Dad, you can't throw us out on the street. I have Kayla. I still have my job." I turned and looked straight into my daughter's eyes. 3 years, Natalie. 3 years you lived in my house without paying a cent or saying thank you once. 3 years to choose between decency and greed. Now you've made your choice, she sobbed. I just thought you didn't need that much money anymore. I don't need money, I said quietly. I need respect, and you can't buy that. Derek stepped up, as if to say something, then stayed silent. Maybe for the first time, he understood the game was over. That afternoon, I went home, poured a glass of water, and sat at my desk. On the table were the hard drive, the USB, and the evidence notebook. I stacked them neatly and labeled them with a small black marker. Phase 1, complete. Every file, every page had fulfilled its mission. As I finished labeling, the phone rang. "Thomas." "Mr. Ward, good news. The Torres family just wired the deposit. The bank has confirmed. They'd like to close within the next 2 weeks." I smiled. "Good. Please send me the receipt. Already emailed. And they said they'd like to invite you to dinner after they move in just to thank you for trusting them." I chuckled softly. "I'll think about it. Thanks, Thomas." I hung up and opened the email. The deposit receipt was clear. Torres, 5% deposit, paid in full. A small line at the bottom. Closing date, May 18th, 2025. I read it over and over, feeling as if I were folding shut a long chapter full of scratches. That night, I sat by the bed. The warm yellow lamp fell over Marjorie's photo, the one where she smiled in the rose garden. I opened the drawer, took out the heart-shaped necklace, and gently clasped it behind my neck. The metal touched my skin cold, then warm to my heartbeat. For 3 years, I had fought in silence, not with fists, but with the law and my resolve. And tonight, for the first time, I felt I could sleep without checking the cameras before the lights went out. I closed my eyes and listened to the night wind at the window. In the blur, it was as if Marjorie whispered, "You did right, Franklin. Rest now. This house will have laughter again." I smiled and touched the pendant. Outside the window, the for sale sign still glimmered under the streetlight, proof that justice, though slow, had finally found the right person. That night, I slept deeply and peacefully, the first in years, without fear of someone pounding on the door at midnight. That morning was gray, sunlight thin as if through gauze. I sat by the window with a cup of cold coffee, looking at the wall calendar. Friday, May 17th. Tomorrow was the court's final deadline for them to leave, but at exactly 8 a.m. Today, a moving truck engine rumbled at the gate. I pulled back the curtain. A white box truck parked on the drive, the moving company's logo smeared. Derek climbed down, crushed his cigarette under his heel. Natalie followed in dark glasses, lips pressed tight. Kayla stayed in the car, face buried in her phone, icy. I didn't go outside. I simply turned on the hall and living room cameras and started continuous recording on my phone. After a few minutes, footsteps, scraping, and thuds rose from downstairs. Each sound cut like a knife at memory. Marjorie's oak cabinet was dragged, leaving a long scar across the floor. A framed photo toppled, glass shattering. The living room cabinet door ripped its hinge. I said nothing. I didn't stop them. I just took the camera and photographed each detail: the floor scratch, the wall dent, the broken hinge, the tabletop crack. Each image I saved and labeled carefully. Damage. 1. Wall. Damage. 2. Floor. Damage. 3. Door. In daylight, the house grew bare. The clatter of furniture, Derek's curses, Natalie ordering the movers, it all blended into the harsh soundtrack of an ending. Near noon, while I checked the camera feeds, a hard knock sounded. I opened the door. Natalie stood there, hair damp with sweat, face flushed with anger. "Are you satisfied now?" she screamed, her voice breaking in the empty house. I looked straight into my daughter's eyes. "No," I said slowly. "I'm not satisfied, but I'm free." She gave a bitter laugh, tears spilling, then turned away. Outside, Derek slammed the truck lid, the bang echoing. They hefted the last box, throwing it in as if hurling their hatred. When the truck rolled out the gate, dust blurred the path. I stood on the stoop and watched until it disappeared around the bend. In that moment, I heard the wind slip through the windows and whistle down the hall, carrying the scent of old wood and a strange feeling lightness. After 3 years of occupation, the house seemed to breathe again. In the afternoon, I used my phone to film a slow loop around the house, steady, careful. An empty kitchen, sunlight catching old oil glints on the floor, a living room echoing off bare walls, Marjorie's leather chair still in its corner, the wedding photo on the table amid the quiet. I sat in the chair, opened the laptop and typed the final lines of the condition report. Record. Structural elements intact. Minor interior damage. Scratched flooring. Dented walls. Broken door hinge. Photos and video captured. Attached. 27 image files and 2 panoramic videos. I printed it, signed, and emailed copies to Attorney Park and Thomas Vega. Within 10 minutes, both replied. Eleanor Park. Received. File complete. Congratulations, Mr. Franklin. Thomas Vega. Good news, the Torres buyers are keeping the closing date and not asking for a price reduction. I looked at the messages and exhaled. At last, it was ending. No fireworks, no shouting, just the quiet of justice. I began packing what was left of mine. 3 small, neat cardboard boxes sat together in the living room. Box 1, the wedding album, old photos of me and Marjorie at Lake Conroe, and a few of Natalie as a child, the innocent face I don't want to forget. Box 2, notebooks and hard drives, the months I spent recording, preserving evidence, the path from collapse to standing again. Box 3, a small wooden case holding the heart-shaped necklace and the carving tools I'm still using. I plan to set Marjorie's slip of paper into the back and lock it, the way she once hid a secret from me. I taped the lids and scrawled with a marker, "Ward, keep safe." Then I stood and looked around the empty room. The wall that once held family photos showed only faded paint. The window admitted the afternoon sun, dust motes floating in the air. I set my hand on the wall and spoke softly as to an old friend. "Thank you. Thank you for protecting me one last time." I knew this house had witnessed everything, joy, betrayal, and the nights I sat in silence, listening to the wind on the roof and asking, "Marjorie, can you see this?" And now, with everything done, I only wanted to say thanks. I locked the door and stepped onto the porch. The Texas wind blew strong, spinning dry leaves in little circles. On the front lawn, the "For Sale" sign still stood, but now a smaller placard hung beneath. Pending, under contract. I looked at it and nodded. I slipped the house keys into an envelope, sealed it, and took it to the title company down the street as scheduled. The clerk accepted it and signed a receipt. "Would you like a copy?" she asked. I smiled. "No need. I'm keeping plenty of memories." Leaving the office, I drove to a small hotel near Houston Street where I'd stayed a few nights during a remodel years ago. A single room, tidy bed, warm yellow light. I set the 3 boxes by the wall and sat on the edge of the bed. From my pocket, I took Marjorie's letter, the paper old now, the folds soft from overreading. I opened it and reread the slanted lines. "Don't let anyone turn you into a victim. Follow the law, and don't fear loss, because sometimes loss is how you take back freedom." I folded it, pressed it to my chest, and closed my eyes. The air conditioner hummed, the scent of fresh linens, drifted with the hint of coffee on my sleeve. That night, for the first time in years, I slept where there were no cameras, no strange footsteps, no hostile breath, only me and Marjorie's letter. In sleep, I walked a sunlit path where Marjorie stood in a garden, smiling, saying softly, "Well done, Franklin. The house no longer binds you. Now, live." I smiled in the dream. After 3 years imprisoned by walls I once called a home, I was finally free. 3 weeks after closing, the check from the title company arrived. I took it to the bank on a quiet morning, Texas sunlight laying long, warm bars across the wooden counter. I didn't deposit it all. I put part into savings and withdrew the remainder to buy a place just big enough for myself. I chose a second-floor apartment in a 55-plus community on the outskirts of Bourne, about a 30-minute drive from San Antonio. The community has a security gate, cameras, lavender beds, and little tree-lined paths. No noise, no children tearing around, only wind and soft closing doors. I paid in full, no loans part from the house sale, plus the savings Marjorie had kept in the bank box. The agent asked if I wanted to redecorate. I shook my head. No need. I'm well acquainted with simplicity. The apartment is small but well equipped. The living room opens onto a west-facing balcony. In the afternoons, sunlight warms the hardwood. The main bedroom fits a queen bed and a small wooden dresser. The spare room is for me, not for guests, but for a wood shop. On move-in day, I mounted a pegboard for tools, set the saw table, and wiped down each chisel and clamp I'd brought from the old house. The smell of oak and mineral oil mingled with the new air, the familiar scent I loved. After months waging legal battles, I could touch wood again, hear the saw sing, feel sandpaper rasp small sounds that made me feel alive. My first project was an oak display box to hold Marjorie's heart-shaped necklace. I chose dovetail joinery, the kind I taught woodworking students 30 years ago. Each piece was hand-cut and fitted so tight it needed no glue. I engraved the back in small letters. M. F. 42 years. Still one home. When I closed the lid, I drew a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly. Something like a door swung shut, not the old houses, but the past's. I disconnected from everything old. New phone, new number. I blocked Natalie, Derek, and Kayla. No hatred, no need to hear more explanations. Some wounds shouldn't be stitched, they just need to be left alone. In the morning mail lay an envelope in neat, rounded handwriting. Miguel and Sienna Torres. Mr. Ward, thank you for choosing us as the next owners of the house. We've moved in, replanted the rose garden, and kept the corner table where your wife set her teapot. A house has a soul, and we will honor that. Thank you for trusting us. When I finished reading, warmth rose in my chest. I folded the letter and placed it beside Marjorie's in my nightstand. 2 pages, one from the past, one from the present, lying side by side like witnesses to what I once feared, that endings aren't always loss. Sometimes they're another form of gratitude. I relearned the quiet rhythm I'd forgotten. Each morning, I brewed a black coffee and turned on the old Zenith radio Marjorie found at a flea market in 1978. The announcer's elder voice read gentle headlines, jazz drifting in the breeze. I stepped onto the balcony, breathed the early sun, and watched the lavender sway. Sparrows perched on the rail, unafraid. I gave them a few crumbs, then walked a loop around the community about 15 minutes, just enough for a song. People here are friendly. Everyone says hello, no prying, no questions about the past. Maybe they've all known their own losses and understand that silence is also a form of respect. I no longer counted days by paperwork or court dates. I counted them by morning coffee and the number of boards I cut in the shop. The first person I called back was Oscar Hale, an old friend from the plant. I found his number in an old notebook and tried it. "This is Franklin Ward." Silence for a few seconds, then Oscar's gravelly voice burst out. "Well, I thought you'd run off to Alaska. It's been years." "I'm in Bourne, quieter than I expected." "Good. I'm still nearby. We should play Chinese chess, like old times." I laughed. "Once a week, Saturdays. The old cafe deal? Deal. I'll bring the pieces. You bring the coffee. That date became a new habit. Every weekend we sat on the porch, playing and talking about life. Wives, kids, both of us gray, still laughing like we did when we were young. One late night I finished the wooden box. I hung it on the wall above my desk. Warm light gilded the oak grain like threads of gold. In the center, Marjorie's necklace rested behind clear glass, catching a gentle glow. The little room held only the tick of a clock and the scent of oil and wood. I stepped back a few paces, looking at the piece not perfect, but truly mine. I spoke softly, almost a whisper. You did it, Marjorie. In that moment, I could see clearly that I'd come full circle from the man who had everything taken from him to the man who could make everything again with his own hands. Not wealth, not reputation, but peace. I sat down at the table and opened a new notebook with a brown leather cover. On the first page, in a steady, even hand, I wrote, Day 1, live for myself. I paused and looked at that line for a long time. Maybe more than half a lifetime has passed, and this is the first time I've ever written a sentence like that. Outside the window, the night breeze blew softly, carrying the scent of new wood and lavender. I closed the notebook and leaned back in the chair. The light cast a glow on the wooden box hanging on the wall, shimmering like a small guiding lantern. I smiled, not the smile of victory, but the smile of a man who has finally learned how to stay with himself. I closed my eyes and listened to the old radio playing a slow Nat King Cole song. His voice was husky, low, smooth as the last breath of the day. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. And in the oak-lit room I whispered back, I understand now, Marjorie. At last, I understand. One morning in early June, I went to Eleanor Park's office again, this time not to defend, but to finish all remaining risks. She greeted me with a gentler smile than usual and handed me a cup of ginger tea. Mr. Ward, I think you'll like this part. Your new will is complete, along with the capacity assessment. I nodded. Go ahead. I'm listening. On the desk was a thick file, its spine printed clearly. Last Will and Testament of Franklin Ward, June 2025. Miss Park turned each page, her voice even, clear and firm as a judge's gavel. The three beneficiaries are the National Engineers Support Fund, the Texas Alzheimer's Research Institute, and the Elder Protection Organization. Real estate, retirement accounts, and CDs all transfer into a trust divided equally among the three. No individuals are designated, and the most important part, Natalie Ward, is excluded from the inheritance, with a notarized legal explanation attached. She looked up at me. I wrote the explanation exactly as you wished. No malice, no insults, only the truth. I opened to that page. I, Franklin Ward, exclude my daughter, Natalie Ward, from the inheritance not out of hatred, but because she has repeatedly violated trust and caused emotional, financial, and reputational harm to me. I believe respect does not come from blood, but from behavior. I read slowly, each word drawing a clear line between past and present. When I finished, I took a long breath. Perfect, I said. No bitterness, no evasions. Miss Park smiled. You've learned to speak in the language of law, not pain. She pulled out another envelope. And here is the assessment of your mental and functional capacity. I had it done right after the eviction case, in case they tried the same old trick. I opened it a printout from St. Mary's Hospital, signed by 2 psychologists and a neuro-internal medicine physician. Patient Franklin Ward, 70 years old, possesses full cognitive capacity, judgment, and financial management ability, shows no signs of dementia, delusion, or behavioral disorder. Miss Park tapped the table lightly. With this certification, no one can demand a competency review again. This is your permanent legal shield. I sat quietly for a moment. What I felt wasn't gloating, but relief. As if, after years of fighting, I could finally set down my shield and lay my sword on the table. She continued, "Oh, and one more thing. Natalie filed for temporary guardianship with the court, claiming she was concerned her father could no longer manage his assets, but the court dismissed it within 2 days. This result leaves them no opening." I nodded. I knew they would try. And I knew they would fail. The following week, I received a thick envelope in the mailbox from another law firm. On the front, "Proposal for mediation and family reconnection." I opened it. Inside was a 2-page typed letter. The tone was gentle, full of neutral phrasing. "Miss Natalie Ward wishes to repair her relationship with her father and requests a private meeting to discuss asset arrangements." I folded it immediately. No anger, no bitterness, just tired. I placed the letter into a separate file labeled Correspondence, Ward, clipped a note, "Politely decline, file, and retain no response." I wrote a short email to Eleanor. "Received the mediation letter. I don't want more lawsuits, and I don't want to go back. Please just file it." She replied almost immediately, "You've chosen the right path. Not every victory requires someone to lose. Sometimes, simply knowing where to stop is strong enough." One afternoon, I sat in my new apartment with my finance ledger open. I reviewed each item. Primary account. Only myself and Attorney Park have access. Fraud alerts enabled. Losses, $19,200. Invested in Derek Note tuition for a hard lesson. What I gained: freedom, safety, and clarity. I took my pen and crossed the last line. Summary. I lost nothing important, only left behind what I didn't need. As I closed the ledger, I thought of Marjorie. If she hadn't hidden that little paper in the necklace, if I hadn't discovered the secret account, would I have had the courage to stand up? I asked myself, without her, would I have dared? Then I answered myself, I would have, but because of her, I dared sooner. Marjorie didn't leave me money. She left me time to wake up, time to remember. Kindness should not become someone else's trap. I took a photo of the oak box hanging on the wall, the light washing over the grain, the gold necklace resting inside, shimmering like a peaceful memory. I sent that photo to Eleanor with a message. "I've hung the wooden box back on the wall. Thank you for believing in a stubborn old man," she replied with a smiley and wrote, "No one calls the keeper of justice stubborn, Mr. Ward. People call that steadfast." In the afternoon, I met Oscar Hale at our usual cafe. We sat at the little table on the porch, the wooden chessboard between us, coffee steam drifting in the sunlight. Oscar looked at me, squinting as he joked, "Well now, you've got your own lawyer, a new apartment, and a display box like a museum. Sounds like it's your turn to checkmate life." I laughed, moved my knight, and spoke lightly but firmly. "And an endgame is also a beginning, Oscar." He laughed, hard, his voice gravelly, spoken like a philosopher. I looked down at the board. My general lay steady at the center, solid amid the black and red squares. I saw myself in it, no more running, no more dodging, just standing exactly where I should. When I came home, the sun had dipped behind the buildings. I stepped into the apartment. The light brushed the wall and lit the wooden box. In that moment, I felt it clearly. I had closed every door, those of the past and those of fear. I sat at the table, opened my new journal, and wrote a second line after Day 1 live for myself. Day 42, freedom has the shape of calm, and I have found it. I set down the pen and lifted my head slightly. Outside, the night wind moved across the balcony, carrying the scent of oak and lavender from the garden below. I knew that from now on, I didn't have to prove anything. I had a permanent shield not only of law, but of the clarity and courage Marjorie left in me. That morning, the San Antonio sky was crystal clear, the wind stroking the rows of purple lavender by the porch. I looked at the calendar on the wall, the third anniversary of Marjorie's passing. 3 years, just enough time for me to relearn how to stand, how to be quiet, and how to live for myself. I walked to the wooden table beneath the oak box on the wall. The morning light shone in, bringing out the golden grain. I opened the lid and gently placed the heart-shaped necklace in my palm. The cool metal touched my skin like a reminder, gentle but resolute. I opened Marjorie's letter, its paper darkened with age, the slanted, trembling script I nearly know by heart. Don't let anyone turn you into a victim. Live, and let the truth protect you. I smiled softly. I have followed it, word for word. I sat down and took a fresh sheet of paper. The first line I wrote, "To Franklin, a year from now." I wrote slowly, each word carrying weight. If one day you feel softer-hearted, lonely, tempted to forgive just to regain an old shadow, read the evidence again. Remember who pushed you down, who said you'd lost your mind, and who stayed silent when you needed to be believed. Forgiveness is not reopening a door, it's stopping the habit of knocking on one that's already closed. Keep going, because peace is not in the past. I folded the letter, placed it in the box, and locked it. The small metallic click sounded light and final, like a sentence carried out. I lifted my eyes to the window. The Texas sunset poured down, orange light covering the sky, blending with the yellow of the oak, the most peaceful color I've ever known. The phone on the table vibrated. An unknown number appeared. I looked at it for a few seconds, then declined the call. No need to know who it was. Some calls don't need to be answered because peace knows how to choose its own shelter. I texted Oscar, "Let's add another game next week." A few seconds later, he sent back a night, a small symbol that made me laugh. I went to the kitchen, took out 2 slices of bread, a bit of cheese, and a glass of red wine. I put on the old song Marjorie loved, "Unforgettable" by Nat King Cole. The warm, husky voice spread slowly through the small room. As the music rose, I sat down at the table and let the golden lamplight fall across the wood. It had been a long time since I felt alive, not merely existing. No more grabbing hands, no more orders, no more disdainful looks in my own home. Only me, and the scent of freshly cut oak. I opened the brown-covered notebook and continued the line I'd started weeks ago. I am no longer anyone's cash box. I set the pen down and looked at the sentence for a long time. Each word felt like a brick paving the road ahead. I understand that I'll grow old, my hair will get whiter, and my hands will shake more, but I will never let anyone define my worth by the balance in my account. The desk lamp softened. The night breeze slipped through the window crack. The scent of newly sanded oak blended with the ginger tea I'd just brewed. The room was quiet, with only the radio murmuring a few late-night headlines. I closed my eyes and pictured Marjorie standing by the stove, tossing back her silver hair, smiling like all those years ago. I knew that if she were alive, she'd say the same familiar line, "See, Franklin, I told you justice doesn't need to be loud." And she was right. Justice doesn't need the sound of victory, only the silence of a tranquil heart. I stood and walked to the window, looking out. The street light spread across the rain-damp pavement, reflecting a soft, velvet orange glow. In the wind, the smell of freshly cut oak lingered strong but comforting, like the scent of beginnings. I realized freedom isn't going far away. It's finally being able to stay still in a space you chose. And tonight, I stayed whole and fulfilled. Thank you for staying with me to the very last line. Maybe you're hearing my story from a far-off city, perhaps Dallas, New York, or across the ocean. Let me ask you, truly, if you were in my place, what would you do? Hold on, forgive, or let go? Leave a few lines below, no need to be long, just honest. I want to hear your story, because sometimes those shared words help someone out there find courage for themselves. And if this story touched a small corner of your heart, please like, subscribe, or simply linger a little longer. We'll go on together along the roads of freedom where justice isn't loud but always arrives on time. I closed the notebook and turned off the desk lamp. The oak box on the wall glowed in the dark like a small light, keeping watch over my sleep. I smiled and whispered, "Freedom smells like freshly cut oak." And for the first time in years, I truly believe that the most beautiful beginnings all start with a decisive ending.